prioritise. What's Cabinet's remit on this? And yes, the other question was, when is it going to go to Cabinet?
Well, when it goes into Cabinet will depend very much on what happens to this round of Community Council meetings. So, as I say, I'm hoping it will go to March, but I don't know. And no.
Not on the forward plan
Not
yet.
No. I'm waiting until I've gone round all the Community Council.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. I think we're probably. I think they're very valid concerns, Councillor Morris, and I think it's good that we're now having this as a standing item on Community Council meetings, and that we can talk about having some more transparency on that. I guess, to be fair to the officer, they can only kind of work with what they've got, but I think it's certainly something that I'll also raise with the Cabinet member, that it would be good to have more transparency and to kind of know the process. You know, can we kind of talk about this list at every meeting, or is it restricted to doing it a couple of times a year? That said, we have been invited to make a decision if we want to. So at this stage, is there anything that anybody would like to take off the list?
See, that's the problem. I could take up the next half hour going through this list and adding things on and taking things off. And what I'd like to propose is that, in fact, that I submit the list. I mean, I can read it out. It's a very long list. Or I could submit it to Gerald and Alistair tomorrow. I did try and merge all the lists, but that's been a nightmare.
Well, what I proposed, Councillor Morris, is, to be honest, we were looking to do something similar in Newington Ward, that we'd like time. The items on the list of Newington Ward are quite old now. We'd like time to work with residents and get some refreshed and new applications on the list. And I think if perhaps a sensible way forward is for all the councillors to work at putting forward proposals in writing. I will ask the kind of deadline for that. We can bring this to our next meeting, which is likely to be in March. So that gives councillors in the community kind of a month to kind of think about what they'd like to do. That said, I don't want to kind of prejudice any wards that are happy to kind of put forward proposals at this point. So if anybody wants, that as a general point, I think we should do over the next month, and we'll get some answers to your questions. But does anybody want to propose specific priorities at this point? We've got Councillor Fleming and Councillor Dennis, so I'll just Councillor Fleming.
It's not so much a priority, but we have two additional things for Friday that we'd like to be included, both of them as a result of things that have come from community groups. I've sent them over to Andrew and Alistair, but I mean, do you want to do that now, or should we do that?
I think if we perhaps do that as this process of refreshing them, because I think they need to be submitted kind of in a particular form.
Okay.
So I think perhaps if we do that in this process over the next month, we'll invite councillors from each ward to kind of propose any removals or additions from the list.
Fine. Well, I'll take my two as submitted until I hear that I have to submit them.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody want to propose anything at this stage? Are they happy to go ahead with that approach?
Sorry. So I think we're quite happy. We have made a list of projects that we'd like to prioritise that were already on the list. So I think we're quite happy to put forward some priorities that can go. So obviously we've got elections coming up in May. Who knows when the next cabinet meeting will be if it doesn't happen before May? And the longer the community go without getting their money, the less fair it is on them. So we want to get some of this money spent. So we quite like to. I don't know about anybody else, but we quite like to prioritise things that were already on the list, and then send in updates and removals later, if that's at all feasible.
Can I ask everyone else, are we happy for Cathedral's Ward to propose some priorities in this meeting, and the rest of us will work with the local community, and we may propose some new priorities and refreshers at the next meeting? Okay, Adele, do you want to propose your priorities?
Okay, thank you. So our priorities are Little Dorrit Court and Park entrance, and Little Dorrit Park improvement. So it's quite a big project, and there will be some Section 106 money from the Brandon House development, but it probably won't be enough. The Low Line Railway Viaduct pedestrian route, 56 Southwark Bridge Road to fit out the community hall. The great get-together, a store for the equipment for FOST and for Blackfriars Settlement and all the different organisations to put all their festival stuff in. Weather and Quentin, some environmental improvements, landscaping and children's play, and improvements to Red Cross Gardens. and they should all have been on that list. And the pedestrian crossing and road farming in Upper Ground, I can send all these. Yeah, I can send all of them to you. And then the Peace Playground project in Geraldine Mary Harmsworth Park. That'll get us started. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it'd be helpful perhaps to give Gerald this list. And does anybody else want to add anything before we go to the votes?
Thanks. Just to add, I think it's been quite confusing for us as well. I think it hasn't helped that we don't have really established kind of neighbourhood forums working in, well, we have one covering our area, but we have quite a lot of our ward which is not covered by a neighbourhood forum as well. But I'd just encourage everyone here to talk to us about projects, and we can certainly go out to TRAs as well to discuss possible projects with them. The one or two priorities I wanted to kind of put on the table at this stage, because they relate to ongoing discussions and work, are the further improvements to Harper Road and the improvements to Newington Gardens, because they are part of ongoing conversations and we may want to release funding sooner rather than later.
Okay, so that was two items. That's improvements to Harper Road and improvements to Newington Gardens. Is that okay, Gerald? Okay, I'll propose those priorities for now. Could I ask somebody to second it? Councillor Morris. Everyone agreed? That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so that actually finishes the decisions. I've just got a couple of announcements and then we'll take a short break before the shopping centre item. Okay, so just two announcements for this meeting. So the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan is being consulted until the 21st of March 2018. The Council's published its preferred option for this. And this is a plan, just in case you don't know, I know we've talked about this quite a few times at Community Council, but it's a plan to regenerate the Old Kent Road area and includes the extension to the Bakerloo line. It sets out a vision for the area of how it will change over the next 20 years. To find out more about the plan and the consultation, please visit the Council's website or contact the Council's Planning Policy team at planningpolicy@southwark.gov.uk. And I think we have an officer just over there if you do want to ask anything specific during the break on the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan, please do. Also, the Southwark Civil Awards. So the Southwark Civil Awards recognise excellence and active citizenship, and they end in a ceremony at Southwark Cathedral, and they reward people who've made a real contribution to our community and to the kind of life of Southwark. Anybody can make nominations for the Citizenship Awards, and the closing date is 31st of January of this month. Nominations can be made online at www.southwark.gov.uk/civil awards, and leaflets are on the registration desk over there if you would like to nominate everybody. We've got a couple of stalls on my right-hand side of the room, so in the break, do please pop into those if you've got time. We should have Citizens Advice Southwark, Theatre Delicatessen, Old Kent Road Action Plan, which I've mentioned, a Linkage Southwark Council, South London Cares, and the Southwark Pensioners. Brilliant. So that kind of ends the formal parts of the meeting that we needed to discuss. We'll move on to the shopping centre item. I make it just 7:10, so I'd like to give everyone a chance to have a quick break and reconvene at about 15:15, so we'll just take 5 minutes if that's okay. Thank you. think I've got everybody back. That's great, thank you. Okay, so we're now going to move on to what's called a kind of community meeting. But for this meeting, we're going to just be talking about the plans for the Elephant and Castle shopping centre. Just to give you a little bit of background as to why we're having this meeting. So before Christmas, after kind of quite a long time of being considered by the council, it was announced that the planning permission application for the Elephant Castle shopping centre was going to planning committee. A number of concerns were raised by members of the public and indeed by some of the councillors sat here, and I asked if it would be possible to bring this to Community Council and for the application to be delayed. So that was delayed, I think, for various reasons, but thankfully that has allowed us to have this Community Council meeting here about some of those very kind of important concerns about the shopping centre. Just to give you a bit of a sense of how we're going to do the process of the meeting, so we have three kind of groups of presenters who are going to speak. So we have representatives from the council, from the developer and the applicant, Delancey, and we have some representatives from the traders and from businesses in the shopping centre at the moment as well. I've invited each of those groups to present for about 10 minutes, and we've got two presentations from Delancey and from the traders. And then for the rest of the whole meeting, that will be dedicated towards questions and comments from yourself and from the local councillors. Just a few things on asking questions. I would really ask if people could keep their questions or their comments to under a minute, 2 minutes, and I will be pushing people to do that. I say that for two reasons. One is to give everybody the chance to speak, and also because I know that there are some quite strong and valid questions, and I really want to make sure that we get responses, particularly from the council and Delancey, on those. In terms of the outcome of this meeting, so I will be writing to the leader of the council, Peter John, who's also presenting tonight, and to the chair of planning about what we discussed in this meeting and about the concerns and comments and other things that are raised by the councillors and the members of the public here. That said, this isn't a formal decision-making meeting, and we won't kind of have a formal vote at the end of it or anything like that. The planning application will be coming to Southwark's Planning Committee on the 16th, I believe, of January, which is a week today. And I would urge anybody who hasn't already or wants to add support, comments, objections to the planning application to do that through Southwark Council's planning website as well. So please don't rely on this meeting. Make sure that you raise your concerns there as well. Okay, so in terms of representatives, we have from the council, we have the leader of the council, Peter John, and Peter's also brought a number of officers from the council, including John Abbott from Regeneration. I'm sure he'll introduce them as well. We also have Alex Williams from TfL to talk about proposals and answer any questions on the Northern Line tube station entrance. And we have Natalie Bennett from UAL University as well. Natalie Brett, who will be speaking about and answering any questions on the proposals for the new LCC campus. From Delancey, we have Stafford Lancaster, who is the investment director at Delancey, Kim Humphreys, he's an advisor from Cargill Ventures to Delancey, and Richard Ward from DP9, who are Delancey's planning consultants. So from the traders and the local businesses in the shopping centre, we have Patria Roman from Latin Elephant, Imad Mehadeg, who is a trader, and Patrick Duffy, who runs the bingo hall. Then I'll probably take questions or comments in kind of threes, and then I'll invite people to respond to them. We'll ask everybody to present, and then we'll take questions. So please don't put your hands up until we've had the last of the three presentations, and then I'll start taking those down. I think that's probably it from me. So I'm going to invite Peter John, as leader of the council, to talk about this proposal. Microphone, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Eleanor, and thanks for allowing me to speak this evening. I've made some notes because I want to keep to my 10 minutes. Many of you will know that the redevelopment of the Elephant and Castle has been an ambition of Southwark Council for very many years, probably 20 years or more. And in the last 15 years or so, it is right that we've seen a lot of change at the Elephant and Castle, principally through new housing. We have seen a new leisure centre there. And one of the main sites, obviously, where we've seen new housing is at Elephant Park, which is the former Haygate estate. Sometimes the changes that we've seen have been controversial, but that ambition to create a renewed Piccadilly of South London, which is what the Elephant and Castle was 100 years ago, has remained throughout. Despite the many changes we've seen to date, for many people I know, that change at the Elephant and Castle will not be complete until the redevelopment of the shopping centre takes place. It's really at the very heart of things in that part of the world. And let's just reflect a bit on that shopping centre. It was built in the 1960s, as you all know. It was built at a time when the car was the star for government, national government. The car was the new way in which we had to get around. And so the shopping centre itself was kind of isolated behind main roads, behind a moat, and was going to be relying on people driving in and out. And that never really came to pass. And the shopping centre itself has never really flourished in the way I think a lot of people would have hoped. It never has become the shopping and economic hub for our part of London. And certainly when we first thought about, and when the council first thought about redeveloping the shopping centre 20, 25 years ago, it was about ensuring that Southwark residents actually spent their money in Southwark shops, generating wealth and income and jobs for our residents. So that's kind of the ambition that has been there over many years. But we know that delivering an ambition isn't always very easy. And I remember in 2006, when Labour was in opposition, we campaigned at that time to get a fair deal for the traders who were then operating at the Elephant and Castle shopping centre. Many of them have changed over that 12-year period. But for the duration of the proposals, there have always been elements of controversy and areas of difficulty. That's undoubtedly so. In 2010, when Labour was re-elected after 8 years to run Southwark Council, our very clearly stated ambition, and one of our concerns, was to ensure that the shopping centre redevelopment was brought forward. It seemed to have lost momentum. So when we took control in 2010, we wanted to get progress, but at that time we were faced with an international development crisis of uncertainty, whatever you want to call it. We were coming out of the crash of 2007 and 8. We had a shopping centre owner in St Modwyn who lacked, I think, ambition to actually deliver on proposals for redevelopment of the shopping centre. I remember in successive years they brought the same single CGI impression of what the shopping centre was going to look like into meetings. They weren't investing time or energy into what this could be as a town centre for our part of South London. And one of the key things was that we had to achieve and deliver a new tube station entrance for the Northern Line, and there was no funding in place at all for that. So our priority in 2010 actually was to sort out the funding for the new tube station. It's important because Alex Williams, who is here from TfL, will be able to tell you, in the next year or so we reach absolute crunch point for the Northern Line lift entrance to the tube. Unless something changes, the station will just break, in short. But delivering a new tube station, escalator entrance, a new tube station, which is a big box being built underground, costs something in the order of £120 million, and in 2010 there was nothing in place which was going to find that funding. So our mission as a council was to get that funding in place, and we did that. We negotiated incredibly hard, and so the funders who will deliver the funding are those who've been developing in the area, including Delancey now as the shopping centre owners, TfL and the Mayor of London. It wasn't until Delancey bought the shopping centre, I suppose, was it 2014, that I think anyone thought that the ambition to see the shopping centre redeveloped was going to be fulfilled. They'll tell you more about their proposal shortly. And in 2014, just to complete kind of the political ambition picture, as an administration, Southwark Labour pledged that we would bring a new shopping centre to the Elephant and Castle. Now, as a council, we obviously have priorities and policies which we want to see delivered as part of any major planning application, and particularly this planning application. One of those is we want to see a fair deal for those who currently trade at the shopping centre. We obviously look for the delivery of the new tube station. We want to see a new accessible town centre for the Elephant, fulfilling that great ambition. We look for any new homes that are going to be built in accordance with our planning policies. We look for the interests of those who currently rely upon the shopping centre to be protected as much as possible. And we encourage Delancey to find something a bit different, something which makes the Elephant a destination for those who've never been there before. And on the whole, is our conclusion at the moment, and our judgment that the current application by Delancey largely delivers on those priorities. Now, there will be some people who have concerns, and I'm sure many of you are here tonight to raise those concerns, but let me address some of them very briefly, if I might, Chair. Now, some people will be opposed to any change and any redevelopment full stop. They like what is there at the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre now. They don't want to see that changed. And I suppose that is a perfectly reasonable view. It's not a view or conclusion I share or the Council shares. Some people don't like the fact that a private developer is involved or that private money is going to have to pay for the redevelopment of the centre. But Delancey does own the shopping centre. They can bring forward an application for its redevelopment, and they have done. And they, as a private company with investors and shareholders, are allowed to make money and to make profits out of their business. That's the reality of their world and our world. Some people don't think there's enough affordable housing in the proposals. 35% of the new homes will be at discounted rents. And in many ways, I would agree with you on that, but we are operating as a council in a broken housing system. Some of you will have heard me say this before. Back in 2010, but it goes back much earlier than that. In 2010, though, the government withdrew something like £6 billion from affordable house building. That meant that the subsidy, which goes to every new affordable home which is built, was cut from something like £120,000 down to about £20,000. So government grant these days makes a very small difference, if any, to any proposal for house building. So what we have done, or what the government has done, and the world in which we operate, is that we are entirely reliant virtually on the private sector to deliver our housing of every tenure. So out of every private housing development, we're expecting them to deliver affordable housing as part of that scheme. Now, if in a different world, if we as a council were able to build, if we as a council had the wherewithal and money to invest, we might be operating in a slightly different way. But that's not the reality of where we're at. We're in a world where the private sector, as a society, we've subcontracted to the private sector the responsibility for delivering all housing. And that means that sometimes what the private sector can offer and will offer is for some people not enough. In the context of this application, we pressed Delancey and have pressed Delancey and continue to press Delancey to deliver as much low-rent housing as possible. And we think we have secured some significant concessions from them. Some people are concerned about the fate of those who currently trade out of the shopping centre. I told you it's a priority for us as a council too. We've always been very clear that we welcome the diversity of the current offer and the importance of the area for Southwark and London's growing Latin American population in particular. So in the new shopping centre, I'm pleased that the offer from Delancey is that 10% of the retail units will be available at a discount. That's in line with our council policy. Delancey will also pay a total of £634,000 to help the existing businesses to relocate. That's a significant increase on an earlier offer of £250,000. And as a council, we are going to work to deliver some additional affordable retail space for those displaced businesses for the period of the redevelopment of the shopping centre and beyond. So we don't lose that current cluster of businesses who are operating and serving very important communities in that part of the world. But we know it's not just the cost of shop rentals which is important, it's the cost of the goods that those shops sell, which is critical for people living in the area. Obviously, without those cheaper and affordable retail units, we won't be able to house those businesses which supply those affordable goods. That's why, as I say, we're redoubling our efforts to ensure that affordable retail space is available right across the Elephant and Castle. Some people are concerned by the loss of the bingo hall. They use it, they enjoy it. Patrick is here this evening. And that's why we've insisted that Delancey must look to provide some space in the redevelopment which should accommodate a new bingo offer. And why we are continuing as a council to look at alternative venues for the interim. It is something that we are really looking at. I know that Patrick has been in discussions with regeneration officers for some little time. He's shaking his head, but it is something that we are looking to help with. I should say our interest and our vigilance as council won't end on Tuesday evening if the planning committee does approve these proposals, because what we do have are review mechanisms which will be used as the scheme is delivered, and we hope and believe that that has the potential to provide even more public benefits in terms of an increased proportion of those rental discounts within that 35% envelope to lower levels than are currently offered. But overall, we believe that a scheme which delivers a new town centre, which offers funding and support for existing traders, which delivers nearly 1,000 new homes, and those are new homes which do not exist at the present time. In a housing crisis, the way in which you solve a housing crisis is to build new homes. That's a basic fact. 35% of which will be available at a discounted rent. With a major financial contribution and the building of a new tube station for the Northern Line. With those, I should have said on the issue, but I think more will be said by Delancey in due course on the tenancies that will be offered within the housing scheme. Social tenants there will have normal social tenancies, lifetime tenancies, but I think a major step forward in all other tenancies that there will be for at least 3 years, which gives some much greater security of tenure to people than is currently available in the private rented sector. And very importantly, one of the great benefits of this scheme is it provides a new home for the University of the Arts London. That test that we set to Delancey of that additional benefit, what's going to bring people here who don't come here currently. And I know Natalie's very excited about the prospect of having the London College of Communications in a new location right at the heart of the Elephant and Castle, with new facilities for gallery space, for other exhibition space, for opportunities to show films in a way which just doesn't happen at the moment, will really make this part of the hub for the Elephant and Castle. So we think all of those benefits on the whole will be delivered by this scheme. And when you weigh the benefits against some of the concerns that people have, my view is that those benefits outweigh those concerns. Now, Is everything perfect? Well, it's for you to decide, ladies and gentlemen. But, you know, we will carry on, and we will carry on right through to next week's planning committee, trying to get as good a deal as we can for the residents of our borough, both now and into the future. I'm going to ask Natalie just to say a couple of words, if I can, Chair, about...
Just about another minute or so, but then, yeah, okay.
Okay, just a minute to say about why this is important, if that's okay for London College of Communications, Natalie. And also I'm going to ask Alex Williams from TfL just to say a word, if I might, about why the Northern Line entrance is important.
Just keep it to a minute and then we'll move on
I
to
will.
Nancy.
My bid, if you like, is very, very simple. We can't stay in our existing building. It's falling down around our ears. It's not fit for purpose. We opened in 1963, computers didn't even exist then. All the stuff that our students do in that building is really hard work to try and achieve what they do because it's just not fit for purpose. We also can't bring people into the building because of the way the building is designed, and our gallery spaces are all hidden within the building. It's a maze, it's a nightmare. It's actually becoming a bit of a health and safety trap for us as well. I have floods on a regular basis where we just can't operate for a whole week at a time. I had 50 computers blown out over Christmas because there was a power surge, because the electricity supply is ancient. We can't stay there, basically, so we do need a new building. So that's what I've got to say. And if it's not here, it has to be. We need a new building, so we have to be somewhere.
Okay.
Thanks very much indeed, Natalie. I'm just going to ask Alex as well, if I might, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I've probably got a similar story, actually. Many of you will be regular users of the Northern Line ticket hall will know that it cannot really cope with the current demands that are placed upon it. With two lifts going from the platform level to the surface, it's an example where the Victorians got it wrong. Basically, very few examples of that, but they did. They didn't provide the escalators at the time, and we're having to deal with those issues now. If you carry on trying to accommodate the growth in the area within the confines of the existing station, we, as a transport operator, have a responsibility for safety first. And if we don't get extra capacity, we'll have to start shutting the station. That means either through gate line closures where you control people who go into the station, or at acute times you'll be shutting the station until that peak subsides, really. So I'm not here to talk about the detail of the Delancey application, but it does present a great opportunity to deliver a station with adequate capacity to accommodate the growth. So 3 escalators down to the platform level that can accommodate all of your needs as regular users of the public transport system, and all of the extra needs of all the residents and businesses that will hopefully come from this regeneration area.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So I'm now going to invite Stafford from Delancey. We're slightly over there, Stafford, so if you could keep your presentation to 10 minutes, that would be really helpful. Thank you. And I think you've got a presentation that should be coming up now.
How do I find the controller for that?
Yeah, that's great. Sorry.
Put my thumbs
You
up.
seem to have lost our clicker, but if you could just move it like that, that's great.
In the interest of time, I'll start. There's a presentation coming up. But my name is Stafford Lancaster. I'm responsible for Delancey's investment activity at the Elephant. By way of introduction, again, hopefully most of you know who we are, but we're a London-based property investor. We represent long-term capital, largely pension fund capital. We've been invested in the Elephant since 2010. We specialise in large-scale commercial and residential projects, and we've also been a pioneer in professionally managed residential rental space with pioneering work at the Athletes Village in Stratford, otherwise known as East Village. Brief agenda. I've got colleagues here who are available to answer, I hope, lots of questions. We're aiming to go back a little bit to set out some facts, we hope, and to clarify where we are today. I'll move on quickly to the next one. Going back to 2014, I addressed this particular group, and we just bought the shopping centre, and we aimed to set out what we felt was a new clarity to deal with some of the uncertainty that Peter had alluded to earlier as to the intent of our ownership. We confirmed we were looking at redevelopment of the shopping centre, not refurbishment, to create a new town centre, a new public realm, the reconnection of long lost connections that were there historically, integration of transport, a mixed-use retail leisure project, all with new homes with a focus on rental. That was our vision and commitment in 2014. The challenges we highlighted were most obviously trade relocations and disruption, affordable retail and housing, and overall financial viability. All of this couched on the fact that we hadn't started any consultation at that point. A lot of our thinking here has been actually to look at the history of the elephant, looking at the Piccadilly of the South, the busy, bustling, popular area, an area for all, an area where lots of people from all backgrounds enjoyed their social time, their work time, their leisure time. We've taken a lot of inspiration from that to think about how we may, from the past, go back into the future. We also try and learn from failures. I think Elephant is cited as a good example of some post-war planning failures, monolithic structures breaking historic connections, single-use buildings, no focus on maintenance management. And of course, in the case of the shopping centre in 1965, a project that actually ran out of money and was significantly dumbed down. So I think we try and learn as well from historic failure. In terms of the project overview, we really spent the first few months of our work here working with Allies and Morrison, a local architect based in Southwark, talking to a lot of people who are in this room, although we were talking to them about how we looked at the reconnecting of the Elephant town centre to the historic connections through Woolworth Road, north-south and east-west into the new areas of Elephant Park and the Cathedral Ward, St Mary's Churchyard. The chassis, the work that went in for several months on that chassis before we even thought about what sat above the chassis has been integral to the plans we've formulated over the years. We're looking to deliver a mixed-use project, as we said, with music, leisure, cinema, shops, new homes. And the area boxed off there relates to a vision that we weren't able to share in 14, but we have now delivered. And that indeed relates to, as we've just been saying, the retention of the LCC at the Elephant. Before our intervention and the encouragement of Peter and his team, the LCC were likely to be relocating. You know, a lot of dialogue, a lot of work has led to our vision now, which is to deliver a highly relevant institution for London for the next 200 years in the heart of the Elephant, retain it. It's part of the Elephant's culture and heritage, and we think actually the critical piece of this project, it is the heart and soul, the cultural soul of the Elephant Town Centre. Without it, it's shops and housing. With it, it's a very different proposition with huge benefits that should flow. Just to touch briefly again, I hope many of you have been involved with this. We've certainly worked hard to try and involve everybody as we've taken that early vision and talked to people, really tried to understand people's views of what we should deliver. This is not, we design it, we come and tell you what we're doing, and then we don't listen. This has genuinely been an attempt through 2 to 3 years of hard work by our teams to try and understand what people felt were the right ingredients for this project. We've listened, we've changed the scheme on the way through. The cinema, the music venue, some critical areas of public realm have actually changed, very much changed as a result of that consultation, and we're very grateful for that input. It's ongoing. I mean, you know, the application was submitted at the end of 16, and the dialogue continues. but we're creating huge change with huge challenges. And as we said in 2014, the obvious challenge is if you're redeveloping, you are relocating traders. We have worked very hard. We hope we've been sympathetic to try and work hard to get clarity, at least, of what we're doing. Clarity that didn't exist, I would suggest, in 2014. We've been working to reach private agreements with most of the occupiers as outlined there to enable possession. We will be very clear if and when we're ready to start, if we secure planning, and if we're ready to then start the project, very clear on one date, which will trigger the vacation of the property. We're in discussions with the commercial operator of the bingo bowling offer, Palatial Leisure, as we said. We'll be hearing from Mr. Duffy later. That's a commercial conversation that is ongoing. I would say that is as discrete to the more important issue of the community uses, the community leisure uses that we know are critical to delivering a successful town centre. We are delivering with this project assets that are available for community use, the music venue, the cinema. There are also operational areas with LCC where we can also offer community use. And I think it's important that all community interests are able to use those assets be it bingo and other things. It's a win-win if we can get that community offer right. We get the people enjoying the space as when we refer back to the Piccadilly of the South, people engaging with the town centre. Then I think that's success. That's it's the right thing to do. It's also commercial success for us. So it's a huge priority, and it's something that we will continue. We will deliver, and will be held to the fire to deliver in any event. We've worked hard with the council officers to also deliver a package to help with the relocation, to help with consultation services and with a database of units that are available. 10% of the units in the new town centre will be affordable, together with the wider elephant regeneration area and the wider offer of affordable retail there. We've also agreed a contribution there which will be managed by the council and by the independent consultant Tree Shepherd, who are assisting with this whole process. And it's important to put the town centre in the context of the wider regeneration. There was altogether about 450,000 square feet of new retail through the Elephant Park, through our projects, and through to St Mary's. And it's important that all the retailers have the right access to information and access to the opportunity to trade in that new area. But the area is coming through in a comprehensive way with a huge retail offer for the benefit of a significant catchment there. Onto the other critical area of housing. We're proposing to provide just under 1,000 new homes. These are new homes. We're not displacing residents. There are no residents in the shopping centre or the university campus. It is clearly, though, a huge concern for people that we are delivering the maximum we can in terms of housing that is priced for a wide range of residents. Our offer is very much focused on professionally managed rental accommodation. Our early proposals to the council, in fact, went immediately to a proposal that involved 35% of the homes in a discounted to market pricing structure, with an ambition to deliver that subsidy across a broad range of pricing. And in the end, that range and distribution of earnings is whilst it's labelled affordable housing, in fact it reflects the marketplace we operate in. We're delivering 1,000 homes in a single, 500 in phase one, actually 500 in phase two, but 500 homes in a single phase. So we are, by definition, offering a large number of units at a single moment, and our pricing has a huge range attached to it. If we go on to the next slide, to talk about our management operation, Get Living London.
Sorry, Stafford, if you could just perhaps a couple more minutes, and then that's great. Thank you.
They've been operating for 4 years and have set a new rental charter in London, which I think many groups, political parties, GLA, have seen as a positive contribution to improving the rental offer. It's interesting at East Village, where we've been operating 2,000 homes for about 4 years. Some of the key statistics there, where our average resident earns £34,000 a year, and the NHS is our #1 employer at East Village. I'm going to rattle through. It's important, but very important. But the project overall is delivering a contribution financially of over £150 million, largely in housing, but in other areas as well. That is the financial benefit, and I will touch, as Peter has, on other benefits in a minute. Moving on to the next one. And the other key question is the overall financial viability. The numbers here represent a year's work around the creation of an independent financial viability assessment. These are not my numbers. These are independent numbers that illustrate the project and the potential that it has to deliver subsidised, discounted housing. The number highlighted at the bottom is a return of 7% per annum. It is a number that actually is at the margin of viability for our pension fund investors. It is a number that we can't go below. We've been pushed extremely hard by officers. We continue to be pushed hard. We're continuing to look at mechanisms, either be it through grant funding or other mechanisms to try and improve the offer further. We will continue to look at that, and as importantly, there is a viability review mechanism proposed where we will look again at the real numbers when the project is finished, because these are all estimates for the future, to see if there is more that can be offered. I'm going to wrap up. I'm sorry, I could keep going for a lot longer than this, but I want to highlight again that the proposed redevelopment delivers financial benefits, but a wide number of other benefits in addition, which Peter has summarised. We've had extensive consultation, and you saw in the earlier slide, in the end, the support we have is very significant, with over 90% of the people who contributed to our consultation in support of our proposals. The financial viability is on the margins, as independently assessed. The proposals are bold, they are disruptive, they are difficult. It is difficult to create this level of change without disruption. We want to do it sympathetically. We want to work with the community to deliver it, be it through the change that has to happen through the change of traders, through the building processes, and through the ongoing long-term management of this new neighbourhood and place. Thank you for your time. I'm conscious of the time, but I look forward to answering all the questions you will have for me in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Stafford. So we've just got one more presentation, which is from Patria Ramad on behalf of the traders and the local businesses. Can we switch the slide back? Because I think Patria's got some slides.
Do you have
as
a
well.
pointer by any chance?
I'm afraid we don't. We've lost our pointer. But if you've got anyone who could switch them for you, or if not, I could ask one of the councillors to. Councillor Fleming has kindly volunteered to be the switcher, so he will, if you just give him a nod when you want to move the slides.
I've divided my speech so that the time is, Patrick will talk in.
Fantastic. Yes, if you keep it to about 10 minutes, and I know we're overrunning a little bit, but the rest of the meeting will be for questions, so I'll allow you to introduce yourself, Patria.
Yeah, I'm the chair of Latin Elephant, but I'm presenting here today on behalf of all the local groups, and to them I thank them for all the input on today's presentation and the points that will be presented here, and to Councillor Maria Linford Hall from the Latin American community, who has been very supportive to us as well. So if you can go to the first slide, please. What we're all about and what we're asking for is social justice for local residents, some of which are already sort of gone. Next slide, please. Social justice for older people and BME groups who are the users, and I want these photos just to make you aware of who are the people who are going to lose out on this development. Social justice for BME traders, who still don't have a place where to go when they're displaced from the shopping centre. Social justice for London's Latin American business cluster, which is one of the biggest in London. And at the moment, in the area surrounding the shopping centre and within the shopping centre, we have about 100 businesses of Latin American background. What are we asking for in terms of housing? Is that it complies with the Elephant and Castle SPD and with what the policy said. That is half social rent, half living rent. We also are asking for secure tenancies, not just 3 year, and that some of this could come up with a reduction in the profit that the landlord will be making out of this. We also know, and we note, that a lot of these demands and agreements will take place and negotiated in the Section 106 agreement, for which we, in a way, are asking for it to be then sent to the planning committee and be approved by the planning committee for Section 106 agreement. In terms of traders, what we're asking for is for a relocation strategy. We also note that there has been an increase in the compensation package and in the 10% affordable retail space, which we've been advocating and opposing this proposal for since the very beginning. We would like temporary units to be allocated. Where are these traders going to go? Where are you going to leave them? For us, that's very important. We estimate that each business supports between 1 and 3 families. The cost of relocation does not include the supply chain, for example. And we estimate between 100 and 250 for any trader that is forced to relocate. We would like to, and we've been sort of guaranteed in the last meeting in the first week of December by Councillor Williams, a panel set up, and we would like that to happen. We have had any consultation at all in all these negotiations. We have had to submit formal objections. And we also want that this compensation package goes and relocation strategy goes to all the traders within the red line, not just the 27 traders that have been identified in the shopping centre. Currently, not all the funds are allocated, and this is perhaps the map's not very visible, but in the ground floors of the shopping centre, we have identified 26 traders that are either of migrant ethnic background or independent and qualifying according to that. If you go to the first floor, which is the next slide, please, there are 27 traders which will be qualifying as well, which to that account, there are 53, not the 27 that has been sort of named in different sort of applications. So we do query whether the 670 thousand pounds accounts for all of these traders, not just the 27, and whether that is a realistic estimate and based on the number of shops. 53 in the shopping centre, not 27. So if it's all within the red line development, then the council perhaps needs to revise the figures that they're giving them to the developer. I don't think the compensation fund will, and this is research I've done at the university where I work. So the next slide, please. This is just to give you a brief example of what is not accounted for. And in terms of the leisure sort of facilities for older people and BME groups in particular, we would like to see the bingo and the bowling to remain. It does affect, and the equalities impact assessment does say, it affects older people and people of colour in particular. We don't think the strategies to minimise, to mitigate impact for these groups are enough or sufficient. We're not convinced it is. There's a legal duty to do so. And these are essential services, as John just said as well. Any sort of redevelopment should consider this, and it is an equalities duty. Next slide, please. And basically what we want today and before I pass the word on to the traders here, is an open invitation to this community council to please submit a formal objection to the planning application based on the 4 points that we've said before. For each councillor here whose constituents are affected by this application, to also ask to talk in the planning committee meeting next Tuesday, and also for this community council to ask the chair of the planning committee to extend the time granted to every councillor to 3 minutes each, not 3 minutes in total. We also have as objectors just 3 minutes, so I have 1 minute. Patrick and Ahmad will have 1 minute of the planning application. So we do think that more than 1 minute is merited and not for all of us. And that's what we at least aim for this. And I'll pass the rest of the time to Patrick and to Ahmad.
Okay. Patrick and Ahmad. Patrick, Ahmad, we're running over slightly, so if you could take a couple of minutes and then we'll go to questions.
Good evening, my name is Ahmad Mujahid. I'm one of the traders. I've traded for the past 8 years in the shopping centre. And basically, all of a sudden, one day we woke up and there's a new developer. For years, other developers have been trying to take the centre. And we have a new developer come, and the first thing they did is double our rate. If not double, increase it by at least 30% to 40%. So that's not the action of somebody that's basically coming willingly to work with us from the first stage. And then basically the demand that was said by Patra is 100,000, 250,000. I can see somebody in the audience laughing at this demand, but really and truly what are the constituents of the council? And each business will feed at least 3 to 4 families. So we're talking about a minimum wage here of income that is going to be lost to these families. And basically, when we signed our agreement, it is a planning policy that you need to make a deal or an agreement with the traders for the display business. And that has not happened. We have not, to this date, reached an agreement with the developer. My lease is with Elephant and Castle Property Limited. Now, Delancey owns Elephant and Castle Property Limited, but in a very long chain. If you go to Company House website, you will see the sequence of chain. So it's owned by DV4, DV9, DV25. Eventually, you find that one person owning it, which is Delancey. I know it's irrelevant to the planning. However, we basically are concerned that once you grant planning application, other things will change, number one. Number two, when the planning application was dated for the 18th of December 2017, at the time of Christmas, we were urgent to stop that meeting and make it to January. And then it was refused. So when I did a petition and other people screamed and started to send objection to the council, this is when the landlord or the landlord pulled away that application. But now they're sending out letters pretending to be the kind one. We have pulled away the planning application before Christmas so we can review it. By reviewing it, they remove some of the demand. So now they're only offering 750,000. Divided by the number of businesses, you're looking about £9,000.
Emma, do you want to sum up and then we'll pass on to Patrick?
So to sum up, this planning application is basically gonna kill at least 85 businesses. This is the cost of granting this application. You're depriving 85 businesses. Multiply that by 4 families. You see how many families the council has to basically look at.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yeah, Patrick, you speak for just a couple of minutes and then we'll go to questions. Thank you.
Right, good evening everyone. I'm Patrick Duffy and I'm the Managing Director of Palatial Leisure, who came here over 17 years ago. So what we heard in the early part of the first very eloquent speech was about the last 17 to 20 years, and I've lived through it. We took over a bingo club in the first instance that was very well run down. It had only just opened, and I took it, and for 17 years I've worked at the Elephant. Bingo doesn't always get a very good press. In actual fact, most people relate it to the 60s. What bingo does, and I want to give you an idea of what's there if you haven't been, and hopefully you might have come soon, is we have a throughput of some 7,000 visits a week. On busy weeks, up to 8,000. And the bowling can take up to about 2,000. So on a rough guide, we have 10,000 people a week, 500,000 people a year coming in to use the facilities there. I was very disappointed, I have to say, with your presentation, because it sounded more like you were on Delancey's side than the council's side. My business, and I think most people, there are some people who know me very well here, it's not just about money, right? As bingo operators, we probably give the best deal there is in the country. But it's about being part of the community. The government actually have the tax on bingo to keep bingo clubs open after the no smoking and all the rest, in order to maintain bingo clubs in the community because of the job it does. You can come up the Elephant any afternoon and find anything between 300 and 600 people doing everything from having lunch, going shopping, speaking to each other, sitting down, a real sense of community. You can go there at night and it'll be up to 1,000, 1,100 people on a very busy night, all in a very, very safe environment. So what are we presented with? You were quite right when you said the Elephant and Castle, right, is the heart, right? And what you want to do here, and I want everybody here tonight to think about this heart that you so eloquently described, you want to rip out and replace with what? Now, you know, I know some people from Delancey who, to be quite honest with you, I've had a very nice relationship with on some occasions, very nice meetings. And I can understand what they've done. Don't believe that Delancey or some innocent developers who just happened to walk in to buy the Elephant. They knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah, exactly, right? They knew who was there. They know the leases that we have. They knew what people they were trading to. What they did was they bought something. Personally, I think they would consider now they've bought a pig in a poke, so to speak, because they've had this huge difficulty in driving this. What we've heard tonight, I don't know how many of you think there is something in this for you. From what I've heard from the two presentations earlier, right, there is nothing for anybody in this room or in this community. I'm going to save myself for my one. Yes, I'm going to save my and concentrate on a minute at the next meeting. But what I would say to you, I'm not opposed to development or redevelopment, but I am opposed to ripping everything out and leaving us with this barren wasteland that is proposed. There is room for development at the Elephant. We should welcome it, but this is not the project. And what I would say to you all tonight, to go to these councillors, because these councillors are councillors for a reason, right? I think they're very misguided if they happen to pass this planning application. What I would say to you is, ask your councillors to say to Delancey, right, stop Go back to the drawing board. This is not what we want. There is no rush whatsoever. Okay? That's the message to Delancey. Stop and rethink this development. And what I say to you, councillors, is stop and think about the people you serve. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Patrick. Right, so we're now going to move on to public questions from yourselves and from the councillors. We overran slightly there, so we're at about 8:15. What I'm going to propose to do, we normally finish at 9 o'clock. I'm going to run the meeting slightly over till 9:15, but I am going to finish them because I think that's late enough. I'm sure you can, Norma, but I think some of us probably will need to get back then. So I'm going to take questions in threes. I've seen Councillor Lurie, Councillor Eastham, and the gentleman at the front. So I'll take your questions, and then I will come back to the other people that I've just.
Thank you, Eleanor. So just as a reminder for anyone who was late, so I'm Councillor Rebecca Lurie. I'm one of the councillors for East Woolworth, where the shopping centre is located. So I'm not opposed to the redevelopment of the shopping centre and a new home for the LCC, and I think it's incredibly important that we can provide that for the future. And I completely understand the need for us to have mixed development schemes, but personally, I can't support a scheme in its current form where we are providing 33 homes at council rent. And it's something that was missing from the presentation from Delancey, and I think it was unhelpful actually not to provide the breakdown for the people in the room to understand actually how that 35 or 36% affordable housing breaks down. Not only does this not comply with current policy, which the Latin American community have set out should be 35% with 50% at social rent, but it doesn't even comply with the emerging policy in the Mayor's London plan, which sets out a completely different structure, which we're not even close to achieving. And to be honest, I think it's frankly ridiculous that we talk about an affordable home for somebody who earns £80,000 a year, and I don't think that that is a reflection of what we would see as affordable in Woolworth. Alongside that, we talk about the need to solve the housing crisis, and we have thousands and thousands of people on our council waiting list, and 33 homes doesn't even put a dent in that list. And if we're serious about providing for local people, we should be providing homes for the people that live here, not the people that aspire to live here, because at the moment I represent the people of East Woolworth, and they're the people that I want to see with decent housing. And I'd be really interested to know from Delancey how we think that this is a scheme that is actually delivering for local people in terms of its housing, and actually from the council how we're happy to set this as a precedent for any future build-to-rent scheme that we want to see in this borough as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lurie. I'll put your questions to the presenters, but I'll take Councillor Eastham's question first.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Duffy from the bingo hall. My question is on bingo. I would like to reiterate many of the points that Councillor Lurie just made about social housing, and I think they're excellent questions. I do worry in a similar vein for the people that already live in the area, the people that use places like the bingo hall. And I worry that I haven't seen an interim solution to the bingo hall, the re-provision of the bingo hall, between when it closes and when it reopens. And I'm worried that it will be an interim, that there will be no interim provision, and then it will be quietly forgotten about. And I just wonder what Delancey have to say about that. I also wonder what the implications are for the Equalities Act for older people and for people from ethnic minority backgrounds who disproportionately use the services around the Elephant and the bingo hall. And I also would like to know two other things, if you'll forgive me, Eleanor. Two other things. Number one, if you offer the basement space, I understand that it's going to be marketed for bingo hall use. Is it going to be guaranteed for use as bingo hall use? Because you can market it all you want, but if you put the price up, then no one can afford it, and you can change it to something else. And finally, will the replacement be like for like, or will it be, a much smaller bingo hall with 6 or 7 chairs in the back of a room at the back of Elephant and Castle? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eastham. Could we get a microphone to the gentleman at the front, please? Sorry, could you introduce yourself as well? Thanks.
Well, I welcome this development in Elephant Castle Shopping Centre. What I would like to urge the council and the developers not to have any space for betting shops. They attract antisocial behaviour and they attract addiction. I was myself attacked in Elephant Castle by a drug addict who lost money and that broke. So I urge the council not to have any space for betting shops such as Ladbroke and William Hill. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think there's a mix of questions for the council and for Delancey there, so I'll perhaps speak to the council first and ask Peter to bring in anyone he needs to and then turn to Stafford. So I think we've got 3 areas of questions there. So Councillor Lurie has raised concerns around the amount of affordable housing, and particularly social rent housing, and compliance with current council policy on that. Councillor Eastham raised a couple of issues on the bingo hall, particularly providing interim kind of provision for the bingo there, and then the gentleman at the end who asked about not having betting shops in the new shopping centre. So Peter, if I start with yourself.
Thanks very much indeed. I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Just on the affordable housing, I mean, the emerging GLA policy on private rented sector is 50% at London living rent and 50% other affordable housing, which can just be kind of 80% of market rents. The council's emerging policy is 12%, within the 35%, 12% should be social rent, 18% London living rent, and the rest at affordable rent levels. Now, we know we don't get to that in the current proposals from Delancey. I hope, Stafford's here and others are here, that we will see movement towards at least an emerging London policy compliant proposal. I think that's very important. I think there is a point, though, Rebecca, about this not being housing for people who currently live in the area, because I think assessments of who qualifies either for council housing or who can afford to buy or who can afford to rent in Southwark demonstrates that there is a massive gap in the market for people who don't have, incomes to buy. They find it very difficult to rent because of constantly rising rents. So there is a massive gap in the market, and that's why the Mayor of London has identified London living rents, which are discounted market rents down to about 60%, 50-60%, as something which is important. So I do think that's a very important part of the offer for people. So I don't think we should discount it. We're of course conscious of council waiting lists. That's why we're trying to build new council homes across the borough. And still as a council have the biggest commitment to council house building of any council in the country. Okay? Well, party policy, Mr. Yeah. Well, we are delivering on party policy because we're delivering on council housing. Can I just say?
Sorry, I can't have any heckling. We've got a process for this.
You throw me off my train of thought, but anyway, I think what's important is that the overall figure that we've got here is 35%. I hope that the viability assessment review mechanism, as it goes through, will see an improvement in that. And as I said in my presentation, I hope that I believe the benefits outweigh the criticisms that can be made of this, because ultimately 1,000 new homes is 1,000 new homes that don't exist in our borough. Well, a lot of those will be discounted. But would you have no homes built? Because that doesn't solve the housing crisis either. We can sit here in absolute purity. We don't want your homes. Whose problems are you solving if you take that approach? You're not solving or making any contribution to solving the housing crisis. Let's take, I say, this 35% that is offered and hope we see an improvement in the market and therefore more social rented homes as this project is delivered. Look, you can take a different view to me on this, but I believe you solve a housing crisis by building housing. Okay? Well, If you disagree, tell me how you solve a housing crisis without building homes, because I don't get it and I don't understand it. Okay. Now, there were other questions.
Can we move on to
on
the
the bingo?
On
On the bingo, let's deal with Carl's point on the bingo. Look, we will have got a commitment that bingo will be re-provided. I think there are good questions that you've answered about will it be like for like. On the interim use, I think we as a council probably have to have a conversation with Patrick about that. At the moment, the conversations are between Delancey and Patrick, and I think we probably need to intervene more and have a conversation. And Patrick, if you want to have a conversation with me about how we get an interim use, how you stay in the area and re-provide bingo, then that is what we will do. And Jamal, on the question of betting shops, well, that's a question for Delancey, but I hear what you said loud and clear, and I would agree. We don't want fixed betting terminals in betting shops well, I can't say there will be no betting shops. It's for Delancey, the landlord, but I don't think it's an appropriate use of people's money.
Thank you, Peter. And just before you sit down, Peter, so just to, I think we'll go to Delancey on those points, but just one thing on Councillor Lurie's question. I think the second part of her question was about setting a precedent in this development. I just wondered if you could address that.
Well, that's why I think the 35% is really important to have got that. Obviously, we have emerging policy, but the policy has to be played out in reality. And I think this is for me, this is the difficulty of the housing economy in which we operate, which is so imperfect in so many ways. People shout at me for saying, well, you should do this, you should do that. But as a council, we just don't have the resource to go out and build as many council homes as we would like. We don't have the resource to go out and buy up land and just build housing in the way that we would like. And I would hope that a change of government to a Labour government in future might help us actually deliver on that aspiration and ambition. But until then, we're working in this broken housing economy where we have to rely on the private sector to deliver all of our housing. It's really unsatisfactory. Well, you shout no, but I'm sorry. I don't know who else is going to build it. We're building as many council homes as we possibly can, but the private sector and developers remain the principal deliverers of housing in our country.
Thank you.
So, I don't think it sets a dangerous precedent. The 35% is important, and all applications are measured against our policy and our emerging policy, and the viability determines whether that is delivered or not. And I don't think you can go away from this and say, well, if you don't quite get there on this one, other schemes will come forward and will do the same. I don't think that works.
Thank you. So, Stafford, if you would like to particularly take those points, and I think, particularly the point on the betting shop is more one for Delancey.
Could I also talk about the housing? Yeah. Listen, I think the proposal we're putting forward is in fact compliant with emerging and existing GLA policy on build-to-rent housing. That is compliant. In terms of Southwark policy, it is very clear that there is a desire to achieve 35% in a certain mix of tenures, but it's also very clear that these applications are subject to financial viability assessments. That has been carried out independently. They're not my numbers, they are independent numbers. Okay, and the conclusion of that is that the project is providing the maximum subsidy it can. The choice as to how that subsidy is then allocated is something we've worked towards, which is looking at housing a wide range of people on a wide range of earnings, not necessarily just the top end and just the biggest subsidy, but a wide range of subsidy, and that is what we sought to achieve, and we think that will deliver a good, balanced community at the Elephant. The other thing is these are new homes. We're not replacing homes. We are taking a choice to deliver new homes. And unfortunately, the inconvenient truth is that we are private capital. We represent pension funds. And the financial viability assessment does have regard to a financial return that is a reasonable return for the developer. So it obviously is a huge issue. It's a very controversial issue, but we feel that we're offering a proposal that is compliant in every sense, and we think will offer a great new neighbourhood and community at the Elephant. On the bingo, we're all agreed in terms of the importance of the community uses, the leisure uses. We're talking to Mr. Duffy, and I'd welcome council work as well on this. We've looked at 18 relocation potential opportunities with Mr. Duffy, as he knows, none of which yet suit his business. We will continue to work on that endeavour. For good order, we think there's no reason to do that, and that would be a perfect interim solution, of course, to that particular issue. In the long term, we are committed to providing the community leisure uses back on the site, but there's nothing, obviously, in the interim. There is a development project. In terms of the betting shop, I note the comment. We haven't got to the specifics of exactly how the operations will come through in terms of the lettings in the new town centre. It's fully noted. We'll talk to the council. There are ways and means they may wish to condition certain elements of that. It's fully noted. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Stafford. So I've got about 3 rounds of 3 questions so far, and I will take more, but I can't guarantee that I'll fit them in, but I'll do my best. So for the second round, I've got Councillor Fleming, Councillor Linford Hall, and I know Tanya's indicated over there. So Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I, like a number of other councillors, have expressed concerns and submitted objections to it. I think the one thing that Delancey needs to be very clear about is that it has to be policy compliant, but it has to be policy compliant in a way that the man on the Clapham omnibus or the woman in the lift at the Elephant Castle train station understands. And the way I understand, not in a technocratic way, the way I understand our policy around housing is 35% of that provision is affordable, 50% of that is social, and that means that council rent. I also understand 10% affordable business units to be there for the traders that are there. So if they don't get an affordable deal, there's no, in the interim, there's no point in offering an affordable deal in the long run. The provision of the bingo is absolutely critical because it's part of that equality duty that the council has. It's part of our policy. It's part of replacing it with provision in an expensive art house cinema, replacing it with provision of a music venue is not the same. It's not catering for those same people. That affordable housing, it's the management of the estate of the affordable housing that my specific question is on. When we say that, the management of that estate is going to be done by private landlords. And the idea is that they're going to be retained for 20 years under that process, instead of 30, which is the emerging policy requirement from the council and from London. How is this going to affect your management of the estate? Are people going to have to move house every 3 years when they get their rents reviewed? I mean, this isn't what somebody ordinarily understands as affordable housing. And I'll tell you what I would like to see, what a very straightforward commitment to be. If you want to do build to rent in addition to the 35%, 50% of which is social, fine. But it would be great if the 50% of the social housing within that 35% was owned by the council, managed by the council, run by the council, accessible to people. It helps us, it helps you, it's the right thing to do, and it's what we understand the policy to be. Why can't you do that? Why does it have to be privately owned? Because I, for one, am only supportive of the idea of a regeneration of that centre, a replacement of it, if it provides housing. And the question about a housing crisis is, it's one thing to build houses, but it's who we are building housing for. Who is this housing crisis affecting? And I'm really glad that the progress of this shopping centre has been stopped in its tracks. I'm really pleased with the momentum that there is in the room, and I'm really hopeful that means that we can come back after this pause and have a better result. But it has to be clearly understood by people.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Councillor Linford Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to go back into housing because Paul Fleming has done something, an excellent speech, and so Councillor Lurie. But what I'm going to say is I'm not opposed to development, but not at the cost of people in the west side of the Elephant and Castle, the west side of the university, the London College of Communications, and that is primarily Oswin Street, which is not only going to live in complete darkness, but also is going to suffer years of problems with the traffic of the building of the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre, and then later on when the college is demolished, and then when the other buildings are going to go up. So not only is that problem, it's also the problem of the daylight sunlight. The daylight sunlight is going to affect dramatically the people primarily on Oswin Street, second in Hales buildings, and third on all the areas that they are the conservation areas of Elios Road, Hill Street, and up to West Square, and sometimes further to the Imperial War Museum. All of that is going to be enormously affected by daylight sunlight. I have had experienced people analyzing all what Delancey had put together, and they are saying is absolutely terrible. The people in those areas are going to live in darkness, primarily Oswin Street and Hales buildings. So can you please try to do something about it? Because in fact, at the moment, whatever you do with those buildings in there, those towers, and then further 4 floors plus 8 floors sitting back, are going to continue to give darkness, especially on the areas on the floors, the lower floors of the houses. Thank you.
Councillor. And then we've got Tanya over here. Could we get a microphone to Tanya, please? I think, she's just there. Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm Tanya Murat. I'm the Chair of Southwark Defend Council Housing, and I'm also a tenant, a council tenant locally in East Woolworth. Councillor Peter John asked how he can solve the housing crisis. I mean, I think this is incredible, really. If successive Tory and Labour governments managed after the devastation of the Second World War to build 500,000 council homes per year, I think we can manage that today. That would solve the housing crisis, not building unaffordable homes for rich people in our borough. I think it's quite clear that Delancey have absolute contempt for our community. It's clear that they have contempt because they're building 900-odd homes, the vast majority not affordable for people that live here, a derisory 33 so-called social rent. Hello? Yeah, so-called social rent equivalent homes, okay, kicking out the bingo hall, kicking out the, the traders. That's clear, and we expect that from some offshore, sharks, which is what they are, £153 million. What I don't necessarily want to see is a Labour council towing the line on that. And also, not only that, we have TfL and LCC lining up to tell us that the only way that they're going to get investment in their important structures and in their in education and in transport is if we allow this set of sharks to rip the heart out of our community. Now, that is not the kind of world I want to see. Councillor John, you talked about the realities of this world, okay? The realities of this world. I would have thought that a Labour council should be in the business of leading the fight to change this world, not get into bed with developers, to destroy our communities, social cleansing writ large in our borough, okay? That is not your job. Your job is to fight with us for the kind of policies that are going to transform the lives of the people that live in this borough.
So, Tanya, have you got a question?
Yeah, my question is, do you think that that's your role, Peter John? Because if you do think it is, you're sadly mistaken.
I'll give Peter to think about his response to that question. I'll start with Delancey, and I think there's a mix there. So there's probably two areas that are focused on housing, and I think it probably really is a question for Delancey to answer on Councillor Linford Hall's questions on the daylight sunlight and the design and that effect on Oswald Street, I think she said.
In terms of the housing management, I was going to hand over to my colleague Neil, who is in charge of our Get Living London management business.
Thanks, Nathan. We talk about the housing crisis, and when we talk about that, we talk about the lack of new homes that are being built. I think there's another element, and one of the councillors was talking about management. If we look at how the rental sector work, we've got people out there who charge fees at the beginning, ripping people off. We've got people who take big deposits from people when they want to move into new homes. When we launched Get Living, we reviewed all this. We spoke to about 2,000 different people. We don't charge fees. We don't take any deposit when people move in either. We work with our residents, and if you actually look at what we've done over the last 4 years, we've actually invested a lot in our community, and the community in East Village is not just people who are renting at high rents, as Stafford was saying. The highest employer is the NHS. We've got a lot of social housing over there as well, and we actually do a lot of investment, and we actually work with our residents, and we put community activity on. And you've talked about the bingo. Well, we actually do activities. We have a knit and natter group. We have a choir that we support through our own investment. And we're not just sitting there raking the money in, but we are actually reinvesting in the area. We invest in the public realm. I came from a meeting yesterday. We're looking at new public realm. We put barbecues in. We put bike stations in for our residents. So we actually work with our residents, and we actually try and put activity on. We do Easter egg trails for the kids in the village. We do Halloween evenings. So we can push back, but what we're actually trying to do is review and look at how management is done. And we're not just doing that for the private side. You know, we've got 35% here. We're talking about the affordable element. That is all part of it. Everyone will use the same facilities in what's being built. It's not different. It's tenure blind, which is very much our approach, and that's the approach that we take. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you also want to address the point on the sort of the design point that Councillor?
Yeah, I mean, could I, Arthur, would you mind, Arthur from Allies, just talking to the...
Hi, so my name is Arthur Carulla. I'm the partner in charge of Allies and Morrison, and I'll touch specifically about the point that was raised on daylight and sunlight in Oswin Street. I'm afraid I think it's a bit unfair to say that people there live in total darkness. This is perhaps these are not, certainly they are the smallest buildings in the development, but they are the ones that have caught a lot of our, a very large proportion of our interest and our efforts. And we've had a very clear design strategy from the outset, which is to design buildings on the east side of Oswin Street that would not impact on the daylight, sunlight, view of the sky of the existing terrace housing any more than if you were to replicate those same terraces on the other side of the street. It is true that the buildings we are proposing are not 3 and 4 stories like the existing buildings to the west. They are taller. They have 6 stories with 2 stories further setback. But these buildings are also leaving a much wider pavement in front of them. And the result is that these buildings are effectively in the shadow of this symmetrical arrangement of the existing terraces to the other side of the street. Daylight and sunlight is something extremely technical. There's been a huge amount of analysis that is factual, and it's in the planning application. I've been there many times. I have spoken directly to many of the residents of that street in the public exhibitions. I have communicated very clearly with diagrams and with very clear illustrative material.
Sorry,
what this principle would be.
Would you just summarise your point?
Yeah, and so just to summarise the point again, the buildings that the scheme is delivering on Oswin Street will not reduce the light or the view of the sky any more than if you were replicating the existing terraces on the other side of the street. It's factual.
Okay, thank you. I think that I'm going to start there because that's quite a detailed point, but I would remind people what I said at the beginning, which is please, if you've got very detailed concerns like that, then to put them in response as an objection to the planning application. And I'm sure Councillor Lifford Hall will raise those as a local councillor. So if I ask Councillor Peter John to respond to those areas, and then we'll move on to our next round of questions. And I think particularly, Peter, if you could talk to some of Councillor Fleming's concerns about, why can't this be the 50% of 35 affordable housing, which is council policy, and about the kind of who manages and runs the social rent properties.
Okay, thanks, Eleanor. Well, I think just on Paul's point, there is, as I say, emerging policy on rental homes which are different to homes which are put out for sale. When homes are put out for sale, the immediate profit to the developer is much greater instantly than the receipts that a developer gets if they hold them for a period of time for rent. So we recognise there needs to be a different model. The GLA recognises there needs to be a different model if there is a scheme for a private rented sector. That's why our emerging policy requires that breakdown within the 35% of 12% social rent, 18% London living rent, and 5% of other discounted market rent. Now, I know we're not there on this proposal. I've said that a number of times. I'm hopeful by the time the scheme is delivered that we will get there. I'm hopeful by the time that when this scheme gets to the planning application this time next week that there will be an improved offer from Delancey. You know, but that's the well, you know, we carry on working right through to get that improved offer. You know, those conversations go on. Look, and then let me just, if I need to respond to Tanya. Tanya, you know, the point is, and I've said it already this evening, we live in a broken housing economy. You and I agree, amazingly, I'm sure, to your mind, that council housing is of great value and has a great part to play in housing the population of London and of our country. But since 1983, when Mrs Thatcher really pushed ahead with Right to Buy and forbade councils from reinvesting the proceeds from Right to Buy in building new council homes, the number of new council homes that have been built in this country has dropped and plummeted from their top number of 185,000 in 1969-70 down to last year something like 3,000. And in the interim, from 1983, we've been building hardly any new homes. Up until that point, we were building something like 40,000 new council homes a year. Now, we've taken council housing out of the equation for housing delivery. That successive governments, you're quite right, have taken that decision. And to my mind, that has been a fundamental mistake because it's what is causing or contributing to the housing crisis that we face as a nation right now. Now, I can't change that. I can't change. No one in this room can change it. We can change it when we go to vote, and overwhelmingly people in Southwark vote for Labour MPs and parliamentary representation and Labour councillors. But it's Parliament and it's government that needs to change this. And unless we have a government which recommits to the building of council housing, we have to operate within the constraints of the current system. And that means, as I've said before, the imperfections of this system, where we have to do deals, where we have to try and grub out as much. No, it's not sucking up. It's about trying to get as much as we can for local residents. And that is why we have policies requiring 35%, and that is what is being offered here, albeit not within the proportions that we would ideally like. So, don't kind of stand up and say, only you believe in the virtue of council housing. I do, and every Labour councillor on this panel believes in the virtue and importance of council housing. That is why we are building more council homes than any other council in this country. That is why we have the biggest proposal to deliver council housing across our country. Well, you can shout me down, Mr. Beeder, but it's the truth. Go and find another council that is building 1,500 council homes in a 4-year period, or 11,000 council homes. You will not find them.
Thank you, Peter. I want to get some more questions in, if that's okay. So, if I could ask, there's a gentleman in the far corner there. He's been waiting very patiently. And I'll just let you know, so I've also got a little bit of order to give other people a chance. Sorry, so just wait one moment. I've also got Councillor Dennis, and I've got Nawala, who's indicated as well. You're in my next round, Norma. I couldn't miss you. Okay, so gentlemen here, we have Councillor Dennis and Nawala.
Hello. Great to hear the presentations of both sides here.
Sorry, could you introduce yourself as well?
I'm Pure Wilson. I'm relatively new to the area. Bought in the place in one of the new developments recently, and I guess I just wanted to kind of give the point of perspective that I'm quite excited to see a new development come in to redo you know, the monstrosity that you know, and create the Piccadilly of the South, and create a new exciting hub for Elephant and Castle, create the new tube station, you know, create the space for the college. And I think, you know, let's put this in perspective. What I've observed today is we have a big problem, you know, some problems for some traders, yes, you know, but there's other places that you can rent, yeah, and you've got some notice about it, yeah. You've got a bingo hall, you know, you know, bingo sounds. I didn't really understand bingo until the description today, but
we've listened to everyone else. We listened to this gentleman.
One second. So bingo, I'm just like, you know, how about thinking about moving now earlier to a new good place, and then you won't have the interim place, you know. And so I guess my question is to the how do we? The question is for the council. I think is how do you prioritise? There's a certain pot of money that comes with a development in this location. How do you prioritise where the benefits go? Is it those that shout the loudest, or is it, you know, if, for example, there's a benefit, isn't there? You can have, you know, 35 council homes, or you could probably have, you know, 100 affordable homes, or do you have them all at that site, or do you have them at another site and have, you know, less central affordable on that site? But you look at the bigger Southwark planning and your 11,000 that you're building as a whole. So it's that kind of the bigger picture here. Is this not get focused on this one development, which is essential to that particular area? But how do we make the whole society, a whole of Southwark, benefit in a broad, in a kind of a fairer way? Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And I think your question there is about finding a kind of fair balance, and I'll put that to the leader. Yeah. Thank you. I'm then going to take questions from Councillor Dennis and from Nuala.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I'm going back to housing. I think this is such a critical issue for so many people here and for so many of us as councillors. And I want to go into the detail of the viability, which I know is a bit technical in this forum, but we have as a council made those viability assessments public, and I would encourage people to go and have a look at those and to see what you think, essentially. Now, I think we do take the point that has been made about finding a balance between the investments that the developer is making and the risk that they might be taking on and needing to be policy compliant. But let's have a look at what that means. We've seen the figure of 153 million up there. I was looking at the financial viability review yesterday, and I believe that the current proposal is in the realm of delivering profits of around 144 million for Delancey. We're talking about a rate of return of 7% initially, but that's due to increase. Now, I know that I would be very happy with that rate of return on my ISA. I'd be very happy with a less return than that. These are huge profits. One of the things that I think is important for us to realise is as well that in the Council's own Commission study, it said that Delancey would be able to deliver 86% in the 3 lowest bands with an initial IRR of 6.5%, going up to 10 to 12% on practical completion. So I don't understand why Delancey are persisting with an offer which is below that. I know this is a lot of detail, but I think it is important because ultimately this is about where we draw the line. This scheme is not policy compliant at the moment, and I very much hope that Delancey are going to increase that offer. And for me, it's about the lower 3 bands. I'm really only interested in social rent and London living rent because I think the discounted market rent piece is not what we need in terms of the population of this borough. So I'd be interested from Delancey in why they cannot increase the social rent and London living rent elements when actually the viability reviews indicate that it should be possible. And actually, even looking at the things that they say are not viable, you're still talking about profits of 80, 100 million pounds. So maybe I'm missing something here. But I think we need to have more explanation if you're going to put a scheme before us which is not policy compliant. Related to that, I have a question for the Council. So one of the things that we do have, and Peter did outline this, which I think is really good, is that there is the possibility built in for improving the tenure mix in the future should Delancey post higher profits. but I think we need to see more detail about this. When would this take place, how it would be assessed, and what is our baseline in terms of the profits that Delancey are going to be making? What is the rate of return that we are accepting as a council? And above that, you know, Delancey would look at improving their offer. Because without that detail, it's very hard for us to make a judgment call on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Can we get a microphone to Nawala? She's in your blue jumper there. Thank you. Sorry, it's really hard to hear if you don't. Thank you.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah. My question really is for Councillor Peter John and Mr. Delancey. Thank you. Oh, Delancey.
I've heard, but Mr. Delancey, I'm sure we'll do.
I thought you might respond. And my topic is actually about culture, and my name's Noala, and I'm one of the founders of the organisation Carnaval de Pueblo. And I'd just like to add a few weeny things on what Patria was saying from Latin Elephant, and I just wanted your guidance. With Carnaval de Pueblo, I was one of the people who was told by many London boroughs that the Latin American community didn't exist, and what on earth did we want a carnival for, and what a load of rubbish. Well, of course, it was a very hidden and marginalised community in those years. We're talking in the 1990s, and the community of 19 countries was living in a very challenging situation, many having come as asylum seekers and refugees second generation ago, and people were living in very, very tough conditions in Southwark and in Lambeth, especially the children. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. So eventually Southwark did agree that there was a Latin American community, and this was a step forward, and we were welcomed into Southwark, and we began as a tiny effort in Bermondsey Carnival, which was quite tough at the time because it wasn't receptive at that stage to new communities. However, by bringing amazing talent over, we kind of rocked the park and brought Grupo Nietzsche and so on from Colombia, thanks to the Arts Council, and the history was there. By 2007, Burgess Park, which was given to us, which people were not interested in.
Do you want to turn it into a question, because we've not got that much time left.
We had 130,000 people in that park, not only Latin American, 50-50, and artists from the whole of Latin America, free events. What I'm trying to say about Elephant and Castle and the Latin community is take a little peek and come with me, if you like, round the shops, up and down Elephant Road and so on, and just have a look at what they're actually doing. And it's all based on the culture. Those shops and those businesses are based on the culture of 19 countries. And I'd really like to introduce you to them. A lot of those businesses began in the carnival. In 2007, we would have 200 stallholders who are the basis of those shops. And what I'm trying to say to you is that when you did come into power in 2010, that's when Carnaval de Pueblo had all its funding cut by the new council. We also had Burgess Park taken off us. So the Latin American community was being whitewashed out. We were visibly showing it to you, to the tune of 130,000 people, and wonderful parades down Woolworth Road. We had wonderful parades coming from the GLA, from Livingston onwards.
No,
There's
I'm
a
really
bit of
sorry to push you,
history.
but
My
it does
question
need to be
is
the
very
question. Thank you.
simple. Do you, Councillor John, do you want the Latin American community and its amazing culture? Looking at even Theresa May, who's, you know, taking the state visit of President Santos from Colombia, the only state visit last year, Buckingham Palace staying there, visiting Downing Street, all the commerce and so on, exploring with Latin America.
I'm going to take your
Do you
question
want to take any of that into Southwark and let Southwark benefit from it? Because I would like to be the one helping to do that. But we need to know where from, and that's where I asked Mr. Delancey.
Okay, Noala, thank you.
Where can we operate from? We have no offices, we have nowhere to build our floats, we have nowhere to practice the culture and support the shops on Elephant Road.
Okay, Noala, I'm going to take your question as, you know, we're talking about the shopping centre here, so I'm going to take that as how are we going to use this specific plans for the shopping centre and the proposals to support the Latin community? That's a very good question. Okay, so we've got three areas of questions there. I'll probably start with Councillor John. So Councillor Dennis raised some good questions on viability, which we'll also put to Delancey. I have if I may, just have my own concerns there, and I've read the kind of optimistic parts of the report that say that hopefully will improve the affordable and social housing offer. Hopefully, like if Delancey make a certain IRR and if the viability gets there, and that does feel to me a little bit like that's about who's taking the risk really of Delancey making an acceptable profit, and I do have concerns that too much of that risk is being borne by the council, which is a public body responsible for huge amounts of people. And I kind of wonder if you could comment on whether it's really a fair share of risk at the moment. And then we also have the wireless question on kind of support to the Latin community there. So, Councillor John.
Thanks very much indeed. I think there was a question about how we achieve the fair balance as well. And it's a good question in the context of this particular application, because I've talked about the tube station, and these developers are having to make a very significant contribution to delivery of that tube station, and all of that is one of those competing interests which is taking money out of affordable housing and other things which would be otherwise delivered on just a straightforward housing scheme. So there is a competition. And it comes back to my point I was making at the start. We subcontract. If we decide as a nation we're going to subcontract everything to private developers to deliver and pay for everything, then something has to give somewhere along the line, and that's. I hope I've tried to explain the very difficult balance that we as a council try and achieve, and it comes out with imperfect results. But unless government's going to come and say we're going to pay for every penny of the tube station, something has to come from Delancey in order for that to be delivered. And it has an absolute, hit on the bottom line of the affordable housing that is delivered on this scheme. I'm going to let Stafford answer the detailed questions from Helen. Helen, all I can say, obviously, that the assessment is subject to an independent financial review that we as a council commission. The conclusion within the planning report is that this is the maximum amount of affordable housing that can be delivered in order for this to be a financially viable scheme, but I will leave the particulars that you have gone into for Stafford to answer. And Noella, on Carnival de Pueblo, we were also the first local authority in the country to recognise Latin American as an ethnic background on our monitoring forms, and I think that we have said, and I hope it's clear this evening, that we want the Latin American community to be at the heart of the Elephant and Castle as we go forward. That is why we do want to ensure that there's interim affordable retail space available for current businesses to move into, and why we as a council will ensure that that is put in place. On Carnival del Pueblo itself, your comments about withdrawal of funding, don't forget in 2010 councils were absolutely smashed in terms of the amount of money that we were given by central government again, and that has continued, and something like 63 million pounds at least a year, more than that, 140 million pounds a year, have been taken from our budget since 2010. Carnival del Pueblo and its stopping operating in Burgess Park, obviously, if you remember, back in 2010-11 coincided with all the work that was taking place in Burgess Park, so it had to move out of Burgess Park at that time. Although the Latin American community has been very heavily involved, I think, in some of the other cultural activities that have been going on and festivals that have been going on in the borough since. We do absolutely, as a council, cherish the contribution the Latin American community plays and makes to our borough, and we look forward to that continuing going forward.
Thank you. Yeah. So on the question of the housing, again, I'll be booed down, but the conclusion of an independent review, these are not my numbers, is that the project is currently delivering the maximum level of affordable housing subsidy it can sustain. I take your point around how the subsidy is spread. We've looked very carefully at that spread between social rent, London living rent, and a discounted tenure. As I said at the beginning, we went in very early on with a 35% proposal and looked at how that subsidy could be spread. And the way the spreading works on a financially viable basis at this moment is as presented. I also, hear people banding around profit numbers, say 100 million, but I've got to remind people this is nearly a £1 billion investment commitment from private capital. So it has to be put into that context. And again, the financial viability review done by an independent party looks at that process, looks at that calculation, and makes an assessment based on the capital outlay against the profit. That's the essence of what it's doing, of course. There is a financial viability review at the end. When the numbers are known, we will know what it's cost to build, what the rents we're achieving are, and whether there is more to be given. It's an upward-only review, by the way. It doesn't go backwards. We're at risk. It's upward only. So it's a process that will carry on. It's not a process that's going to stop. It's a process we think has been managed professionally, thoughtfully, but there is more to do, and we need to see how that review mechanism will follow. As to the risk point, look, we are looking clearly to work. We have to work in partnership. We want to work in partnership with the council, with the community. But in the end, the project is being called upon to be funded by private capital. I'm not aware of anyone else who's providing us financial support. The financial risk is sitting with us, and we're looking and prepared to take that significant risk. But I'm not aware of anyone else who's offering to subsidise me around that. We're not a charity, we're not a housing association, we're not a council. So we're taking the risk. It's a significant risk, and we think that it sits pretty squarely with us, which we accept.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take another round of 3 questions.
Could I just make one more point on the Latin community?
Yes.
I just want to be clear that we really do embrace we're not here to destroy a community. We embrace what is here already. We're working already with certain members, with the carnival and other things, in trying to support where we can. We're not here to try and totally change what exists today. We are trying to be sympathetic as we approach what is a very difficult, challenging task for everybody.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, there's a really specific question there that I think, if you want to get back to Councillor Dennis separately, but I think she was asking what the baseline there is on your on the review process. So where do you start? Where does the review process kick in? So at what point will you essentially kind of say, okay, we've made a decent profit here, we will be looking to provide more affordable housing? That's how my simple brain understand it.
The review refers to a 7.15% figure, which is on the table. It's available for everybody to look at. It talks to the potential to potentially improve the offer through the further viability review mechanism, which we will look at as well. But it concludes that that is a return that is commensurate with the risk, and based on that return we're delivering, on the basis of the current numbers, the maximum housing subsidy available from the project. But sure.
Thank you for that. Now I've got quite a lot of people on my list, and I've also seen that we're pretty much at 1:15 now, so I'm afraid that I'm probably going to take 3 more questions. We'll see how quickly we get through those, but I can't guarantee that I'll take anyone else from that at that point. We'll see where we get to. I don't want to finish any later than 9:30. I don't think that's fair on people, so I won't take any more. I've got Councillor Seaton, Norma, there's a gentleman at the far back there. I'll definitely take those 3. I'll then try and take the others that I've got on my list. But again, I am going to finish at 9:30. I've taken many questions from you, Mr. Bedell, but I've got to take them in order that I get them. Okay, so I'm going to take Councillor Seaton now.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, There are a few points I want to make very quickly before I ask the question, and it's really because, of course, I've been a councillor in this area since 2006, and of course, I've lived through the regeneration of the Haygate estate, and I've seen both the benefits and the disadvantages of that regeneration scheme. It will, and on my watch, it's not likely to happen again. That's okay. So we're clear about that, but we're also got to appreciate the context in which we're operating in. And indeed, Councillor Peter John is quite correct. The government changes to how local authorities are able to support and fund social housing has caused this crisis. And the use of particular terms such as affordability is another way of confusing the matter. Clearly, if someone earns between £40,000, £60,000, £80,000, that is not affordable. That is a premium rent, isn't it? Yeah, there you are. So we're all quite clear then that what's happening at this stage is that local authorities are being pushed into a corner.
Right,
but we can defend ourselves.
Have you got a question?
A few questions for yourselves. So I'm going to focus on the traders, if I may, and I want to focus on why we should make sure that those existing traders are able to benefit from what is, from our perspective, a regeneration exercise. It's not simply redevelopment of the shopping centre, which is an iconic building in the centre of Elephant Castle. This is regeneration, and therefore we all should benefit, and most certainly those traders should benefit. So the first question is, the interim space provision. Can I ask for our representative from Delancey to expand upon the interim space provision for existing traders so that they can survive the transition between the demolition and regeneration of that building? Secondly, can you expand upon the compensation arrangement for existing traders? Obviously, there's considerable disruption to trade, and we want to make sure that they can, not only can they benefit, but they can survive and therefore able to trade in the new building, which hopefully would not be too expensive. And of course, those traders who want to trade in the new building, we want to make sure they can return. So what is the provision to ensure that those traders can return? 10% at a discounted rent sounds reasonable until you appreciate the number of traders that exist. Initially, I think the figures are talking about 16, but I believe a further figure mentioned by Latin America, by the representative earlier on, was 27. Yep. Gosh, there you are.
Councillor Zizzi, I think I've got that.
Right,
I do want to run through these questions, so thank you very much. So, Norma, if I could ask you to speak very quickly, that might give us a chance for our next round of questions.
Right. I am Norma Lawrence, and most of you, probably, one or two of you, probably know me. I've been through the regeneration at the Elephant Castle, i.e. the Haygate, for the past 7 years. I spent many nights, like I'm here, listening to stories. Now, Delancey, you brought some people over there to convince us what you're going to do. Rubbish! I don't believe a word of it because I've seen it all before. But before I come to you, just Peter John. Now, your question to Mr. Beadle was, do we need new homes? Answer, yes. But we need new homes for people who can afford it. We need new homes for people who live here. Delancey is trying to entice other people to come in, right? So that we have to leave. We ain't going, we're staying.
So, Norma, can you ask your question? Because we're really going to run out of time.
Sorry. Mine is not in the question.
What?
Mine is the statement.
Can I take a question from someone else?
Delancey, I'm just putting Delancey back in the box. Now, this is Delancey. You seems to be providing just for the people you expect to entice to move in, which I've just said to Peter. Not those who are already here. We would look to see something different. You're very secretive. Most people don't even know what you're about. You only tell us the bit you want to tell us.
Norma, I'm really sorry, but if you just make a speech, then other people don't get a chance to ask questions. So, can you ask a question now, or we're going to move to someone else?
What have you done in that scheme for young people?
Okay.
Like children? There's nothing in there. And if the bingo all go, people like me ain't got nowhere else to go either. So you've got nothing for the elderly, which is like bingo, or people go to the bingo. You've got nothing for teenagers or young children, because I haven't seen anything in your plan.
Okay, it's a good question. Okay, so there was a gentleman at the very far, kind of my left, I think right at the back, who put his hand up next. And I'm afraid I just saw like a hand in a black jacket. Could you stand up? Sorry, it might be a bit easier to hear you.
I don't need to speak. I don't need to. My points are taken up.
Your question's been taken, Jerry. In that case, I can take the next person on my list, and that was Councillor Noakes. So, Councillor Noakes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've also, like many people in this room, been around for a long time. So I've been a councillor for the last 16 of the last 20 years. So I've also lived what's been going on at the Elephant and Castle. I think the point I would want to make is, I mean, the council leader has talked about that we need to deliver homes, that we need to deliver regeneration. I think everybody agrees with that in its general sense, but actually it is about the right sort of regeneration, and it's about the right sort of homes, and by that we mean affordable homes and homes that people can actually afford to, because otherwise we will be seen as not delivering regeneration, but we'll be seen as delivering gentrification. And that is not what people in this borough are looking for. This is an area which has always been a mixed borough, in fact an area that has catered for people from all incomes, and we should remain, and that should seek to be our aspiration. My point is, of course there are some very important infrastructure projects that need to be delivered on, things like the new tube station entrance, things like a new home for LCC, there's no doubt about that. But there are some deep flaws, I think, in this application, and it saddens me that as a councillor for 16 years that I'm actually going to have to oppose this application, because I think lots of people in this area in our borough do want regeneration, they do want to see new homes being built, affordable homes. But I think it comes down to me to a flaw in the whole planning process and the way we do planning in this borough. Unfortunately, the deals and the conversations are all had between the developers and the council. And the constituents and the residents are just not listened to. And by the time they come to you to speak to you, the deals are already done, I'm afraid. And then we go to planning meetings and nobody listens to us, and unfortunately the developments get passed through. So I would like to ask the council leader if he will commit to a new way of deciding on planning applications in this borough, where residents are actually involved right at the beginning of the process and have a genuine say on the type of regeneration and development that we have in this borough, so that actually people can all be proud of what we deliver. And an immediate thing, I would ask that he speaks to the chair of the planning committee to ask him to make sure that more time is given for ward councillors from both wards and for those who wish to object to this application, so that everybody can have a fair say, not just 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noakes. Okay, so I'll take Delancey first and then Councillor John. So we've got questions there from Councillor Seaton on interim space and people's ability to return if there's only 10% of affordable retail and there's many more businesses, then how's that going to work? Norma asked a very good question about what's going to be provided for young people at the new development, and Councillor Noakes asked about, can we consult on these big applications in a better way? If I may, I'd like to just add into that, there have been proposals to set up kind of panels of local residents and affected businesses. I'm not quite sure why we don't do that on every application. I know TfL do it on the Northern Line extension, it works very well. So could we do that? And the particular question about allowing ward councillors time to speak during planning, I'm afraid that we are probably not going to have time to take any more questions. So I'd also ask you to summarise. I'm really sorry, but I am going to finish at 9:30, and so my apologies to people that had their hands up, and I'll come and speak to you afterwards if I can. Okay, so Jim, I'm really sorry. I can show you my list. You're on there, but I can't take them from everybody, and we have to finish at 9:30. So I'm going to ask Stafford to speak, and then Councillor John, and then we'll finish. Thank you. I've taken people in order that they've put their hands up. Stafford. I'm sorry, I've been very clear that I'm finishing at 9:30, and I've taken people in the order that they have put their hands up, and I'm happy to show anybody my list. I'm sorry, I'm not staying here past 9:30. I'm sorry, but Jim, you're on my list, but I've been very clear on this. Okay, my apologies, but you were after other people. Well. Okay. Well, we've got the local elections coming up, and you're welcome to stand and then stand for chair then. Okay. Thank you, Stafford, please.
As to traders, look, we don't, we own a shopping centre now. We do not own other wider assets across the borough. I would say that for a lot of businesses, an interim move can be very challenging. There are double costs, significant costs for a move out and then a move back. I think a lot of the work that we've already instigated around the relocation is around helping businesses to work on a long-term relocation plan. They're very welcome, obviously, to come back, but it's not necessarily the route that many businesses would rationally choose. But we're not closed to that idea, and part of the relocation plan is, of course, looking at new alternative premises, helping with a database of properties that are available. So it's all part of the package that we tried to put together to deal with what is, a difficult, sensitive issue. In terms of the question on housing allocation, again, I mean, the proposal we're offering is with a blended discount to market rents of 55%. That is a fact. Those are the numbers. And it's also true that the priority will be given to people on Southwark's housing lists to this housing. So it's not about introducing people from the outside. It's absolutely about welcoming people who already live here and already on council lists to come and live in these homes. In terms of work with younger people, you can go on our website. We have a huge passion in that area. We're already bringing certain initiatives into the Elephant, but in a wider sense. For example, you can look at our website. We sponsor the UK Schools Chess Championship. That is a good example of how we try and approach our business in a responsible way. And there's a lot more that we are proposing to do to help young people, to help through education in other areas. But you have to take my word for it, and we'll only earn your trust in the long term. But that is absolutely our intention. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor John?
Thanks very much, Eleanor. Just on Martin's points about interim space, obviously, across the broader area, as a strategic approach, we have tried to ensure that there will be sufficient affordable retail space for businesses which might be displaced from the Elephant and Castle. And we are taking forward, and will take forward, a scheme to change the use of garages at Perronet House, to turn those into retail units, because we believe that will offer genuine, affordable and local retail space for some of the businesses affected. There are other schemes that we will be looking at as well, which we as a council will see are provided. Norma, I hear what you say, and I share your frustrations about how the system works and how we have to work in this current system, and I've kind of made those frustrations clear earlier on, I hope. But ultimately, our belief is that you don't solve a housing crisis by not building homes. You have to build homes, and we have to try and get as many of those to be genuinely affordable as possible, and that's what we're seeking to do. And under the review mechanism, my understanding is if Delancey's profits get to a level of 11.1%, we have a fully compliant, policy-compliant scheme from the 7.15%. But Stafford can respond to you in due course with Delancey's position on that. And then finally, David, look, I mean, I think we have one of the most open and transparent planning processes in London, if not the country. We were the first. Well, you can laugh, everybody, but we were the first to completely publish all viability assessments, whether they were compliant or not. And I think it can't be the council's job to do the work, quite frankly, that developers should do, which is going out and persuading communities and persuading people that their schemes are worthy of support. We can encourage them. There are people who have made good progress in this regard and others who haven't done so well. But look, we're all here tonight, and Delancey are here tonight answering questions from members of the public who've come along to this meeting, you know, and I think that kind of openness and transparency is important. And it's not right at the end of the day, because you know, David, and Adele will know as a member of the planning committee, that things change right down to the evening and to the planning meeting itself. And that's how our process works. But, you know, I suppose what I would say in response to you is I would encourage any developer who wants to come and do anything in the borough, speak to the local community impacted and affected as soon as possible, because by building those relationships,
Fix the mic quickly for that point. If that's... Sorry, just fix the mic there.
Yeah, I was just saying, you know, it's because by doing that you win the trust and confidence of the community, and we don't have people objecting to proposals as they, you know, at the 11th hour and 59th minute. So I think, you know, that would be my encouragement to people, David. And as I say, I think as a council, we do a pretty good job of ensuring that there is openness and transparency.
Thank you, Peter. I'm really sorry. I am going to bring the meeting to a close at 9:30, like I said, and my apologies to people who didn't get a chance to ask questions. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke and everyone who attended, and I would remind you, please put in any comments to the planning process, and make sure you're also welcome to put in written questions on the forms. Thank you. Thanks.